So we are recording. So again, we just want to welcome everybody to the third part of the Self-Advocacy webinar series. And today we have Kathy Fitzgerald, who's a key coalition board member. And we have Garrett Dominic, who is a self-advocate. So I want to thank everybody for coming. And we'll turn it over to Kathy and Garrett.
Thank you, Rick. And it's really exciting to be thinking about Key 33, 33 years of advocacy. And I have to say, I think that each year has its battles and each year has its victories. So we'll see what advocates can accomplish this year. But we're hopeful that our platform will be well received. Next slide, please. So I just want to make a quick note on behalf of Key Campaign and all of their collaborators that the local Key communities will be holding local rallies. So whether you're in Soldotna or Anchorage or Wasilla, wherever you are, there will be a local rally at the same time that we rally on the Capitol steps in Juneau. So if you aren't able to participate in Key in Juneau, please participate in your local Key. So we based our platform issues on basically the condition of what we hear from individuals, families, the Provider Association, and the Governor's Council, and we come up with platform issues that seem to be the most meaty or of most concern. And so, as all of you know, we haven't had really great years in the past. We've lost some things, and so many of you will remember that in FY16, the waitlist draw was dropped from 200 to 50 individuals a year. In January of this year, the beginning of January, the council reports that there were 730 individuals on the intellectual and developmental disability wait list. So it had gone up considerably from 500 and something to 730 since that FY16 change in the number of people coming off. The other concern that we have really about people coming off the wait list is as our population ages and people pass away, or if they happen to move out of state, that those people that had the IDD waiver don't seem to be being replaced. In other words, their waiver is freed up, but we're not seeing new ones take its place. And the worry that not only are we not seeing that backfill, but we're supposed to have an additional 50 individuals come off each year. Next slide. So we really, in our world, have two, in the disability world, we have two waivers at this point. We have the IDD waiver when we're thinking about full supports, and we have the individual's support waiver, which really came about from grant dollars. Most of you will remember that years ago, even before we had waivers, we only had grant dollars, and it was all state money. And so as money became tighter and spending became more difficult, the state decided to use those grant dollars as a match to draw down federal dollars. And they decided that they would put everybody that had been on that grant that met level of care into the ISW waiver. So the individuals with supports waiver. However, we don't have everybody that was receiving grants in the IS waiver now. The council reported that they have 339 individuals enrolled in that ISW waiver. Next slide. Just one other little comment about that, the ISW waiver is that it doesn't provide as many hours of support as the old grants did. So people now have, some people are still waiting for that ISW waiver, and when they do get it, they're getting less support than they would have gotten under the old grant system. So what we're hearing from provider agencies, who certainly keep a really good record of who's coming into service in their agency, is that we aren't seeing new people coming off, or we're not seeing those 50 people pop up. A few agencies have said they've had one or two, but nobody has said they've had several people come into service. So we're a little bit concerned about the length of time that it's taking for that 50 to come on. Next slide. So I'm just going to read through this, so bear with me. I know you can read it yourself, but I'm going to read through it, and Garrett's going to make comments. These are all comments that that Key has heard, or the council has heard, or AADD providers have heard, coming from advocates or self-advocates about the wait list. So I lose skills when I have to stay home and wait. Waiting keeps me from having a meaningful life in my community. It keeps me from becoming more independent, or as independent as I could be. It keeps me from gaining new skills, from developing new friendships and my sense of belonging. It makes me sad to wait. Waiting shuts out all kinds of opportunities for me, and waiting hurts. Garrett, did you want to say anything?
Sorry, I muted myself, and anyway, no, all these bullet points that were mentioned, I myself as a self-advocate and just hearing from everyone that was on the waiver that it's a real struggle. And so now that these people that are on the waiver, and myself, I can tell you that they're more happy, they have more friends, they're more active. And so definitely being on the wait list is a real struggle. So
yeah. Some of the other comments that we hear, you want to I've heard that families have not been able to keep their job because they haven't had support to take care of the individual with the developmental disability, and that creates a hardship for the whole family when that has to happen. My individual support waiver doesn't support my needs. If you only have 10 hours a week of help, it's hard to have a life on 10 hours a week, right? Many of my friends on grants, that had grant services, are now waiting. 269 ISW, 300 are waiting. Those numbers change. So I think it's safe just to say that the ISW is not fully online. There are slots for 600 people to be on that limited support waiver, but so far we don't have that many. And the efforts to save money by the state, to save Medicaid dollars, have really caused a lot of damage in how things work for individuals and families, I think. Next slide. So the ask for priority one is that there's funding made available to increase the Medicaid waiver Medicaid waiver draw, the IDD waiver, from 50 to 100, and to make sure that that those are additional waivers, so that we're not losing waiver slots to people passing away or moving out of state. Garrett, comments?
One, I know that it would be really beneficial if we doubled um, the, the people that do are accepted, services, 50 to 100. I know someone that, was at slot 61, but she had to wait 2 more years until she was granted services because of them only allowing 50. So I do hear of the struggle. So that's the only thing that I have to add.
Right, right. Some of the comments I've heard is that from individuals is that they would really like to be like their brothers and sisters and be able to start their lives and not have to sit waiting. So the second priority for Key Campaign this year is to stabilize the DD infrastructure by implementing predictable, stable policies and funding. So in FY19, Senate Bill 174, which we all love and appreciate, the Alaska Developmental Disability Shared Vision, was passed. And the shared vision reads, Alaskans share a vision of a flexible system in which each person directs their own support based on their strengths and abilities toward a meaningful life in their home, their job, and their community. Our vision includes supported families, professional staff, and services available throughout the state now and into the future. Next slide. So when SB 174 was passed and adopted, it really became the blueprint or the operating manual, if you would, for how our services should operate, right? We have a shared vision and this is the way it should be. Currently, our system really does not provide a predictable, stable funding or policies to support people in having meaningful lives. Our current system is not funded adequately, and it's unpredictable. It's bureaucratic, it's inflexible, and it's not very person-centered. Next slide. So what do we mean when we say stabilize infrastructure? What is infrastructure? So infrastructure are all the things that provide the means for services to happen for individuals and families. Things like funding and regulations and policies, those all have to be in place for services to actually get implemented or to happen. What we do know is that for the past several years, there have been no increases in rates to agencies. Okay, that means that when inflation happens and insurance goes up and lots of things happen that cause the cost of business to go up, they don't have increases to be able to cover those extra expenses. And this lack of funding and changes in regulations have really created some pretty huge cracks in our infrastructure and our ability to provide the kind of service that our DD Vision wants us to have. Next slide. So our infrastructure really is supposed to be supporting the policies that drive us to implement the DD Vision. It should be removing the barriers for a meaningful life. Next slide. So here are the talking points and the things that we're hearing about. Just what is it that seems to be causing the issues that's making it so difficult for us to realize fully the DD Vision? So there are things like hours of rehabilitation services being cut and personal care services being reduced. And it makes it hard for people then to have the kind of full life that they would like to have or need to have to be part of the community. In order to build a life in the community, I need staff, and my agency is having tremendous difficulty finding people to work because their pay often is not competitive to the nonprofit world and the other worlds, right? Or the for-profit worlds. And McDonald's and Fred Meyer. The main reason I can't keep staff is that my agency's not paying a competitive wage, right? So what happens, we all know as advocates and self-advocates, when our staff leave, it creates a whole huge hole in our life, right? We have to train somebody new. They have to know how we communicate. They have to know how we need help provided. It just makes it very hard when we lose staff and when we can't get the staff that we need to live our lives. Next slide. Garrett, please jump in anytime.
I've been waiting on you.
So anything you want to add at this point?
Just I myself, I know the hardship of having my hours cut. Like 5 or 6 years ago, it went from 30 to 15 hours of day have, and since I'm a busy guy, before I was able to get my own transportation, my staff, I had to rely on my staff to get from place to place. Lions and other work, other volunteering work. That was really critical. Sometimes I had to bank my hours if I wanted to go to like do a major event or out of town. So it's a real struggle when you don't have enough hours and when you don't have staff. So
Right. Makes it hard to live, doesn't it?
exactly.
Yeah. So some of the other talking points there or issues that we've heard is that my access to support is reduced because I can't find a care coordinator. So this is really rather interesting with the ISW waiver, the individual supports waiver. The plan of care or the support plan is as detailed just about as the full IDD waiver, but the reimbursement rate to care coordinators is significantly less. And so care coordinators are having to make decisions to perhaps not take new ISW folks on because it's so time consuming and is not cost effective for them. So that's creating a big crack in our system. If you don't have a care coordinator, you can't have a waiver. because the care coordinator has to help develop that waiver. So it's a big crack. My support services have been cut in half, impacting me and my family. So what does that mean when you can't get to all the things that you have in your life that make it meaningful? People get pretty sad, pretty depressed, and things begin to spiral down for lots of folks. I had to move because my roommate died and we couldn't find another person to live with me. This is a true story. So if you're in an assisted living home and there are not additional people coming into service and being able to take advantage of being supported in an assisted living home, then agencies often have to downsize their residences, and that means people have to move and relocate and get different people, and it just is very, very, very disruptive to people in their lives. Next slide. I don't get all my services because there aren't enough staff. Lots and lots of stories about not being able to find people to come in and do even the reduced hours of day hab that you have. I can't find an agency to provide respite services. So for families who have children with developmental disabilities who just need a little break or in time to kind of revamp and recuperate, those respite hours are really critical. In fact, for young families, that's generally the only service or the main service that they'll require. And when you can't find somebody to provide that basic respite service, it really creates a lot of stress for the mothers and fathers trying to figure out how they're going to handle caring for someone with a developmental disability. And then finally, how do I have a meaningful life with 10 hours of support? So Dominic, how would you get by with 10 hours of support a week?
I would not be able
Yeah.
to. I would shrivel up and just probably sit in my room all day. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of individuals find themselves in that 10 hours a week, a limitation, just doesn't work. So additional talking points is I have to plan way ahead of time to get supported employment staffing. Most people don't know a long time in advance when they're going to be asked to travel or to do a job outside of their own community. Currently, supported employment doesn't allow for travel outside or work outside of their home community. So if you have a job that requires that you go to Ketchikan, for example, to do a training or to provide a service, right now, if you were on supported employment, that would be very hard to do because you couldn't have staff go with you. So one of the simple solutions would be to add to the list of services under supported employment the ability for staff to travel with individuals needing that support. Comments? No?
Well, I personally have not been on supported employment. Yes, I was considered a supported employment crew member, but at the time I did not have supported employment services. But I would feel the hardship of not being able to get the training that I need to succeed in that line of work. If I didn't meet that year deadline, then how would I be able to succeed in my job? So that would be very hard.
Right. So the system really doesn't allow for me to have changes in my activities without advanced approval. Um, the, you know, the whole issue around spontaneity, being able to make a decision and change your mind and take advantage of an opportunity that might have popped up, is a real issue for individuals with developmental disabilities who might want to do something different, or for families who might want to change and do something different. So having a flexible system where people could be spontaneous like the typical individual is would be very nice. I'd like to be able to use the hours the way I would like, instead of the exact regulation interpretation, narrow interpretation of how I can use them. One of the big complaints that I've heard is that staff can't take me to my friend's birthday party because my friend lives in an assisted living home, and because that's an assisted living home, you can't use rehabilitation. So there are just kind of little rules within rules that make it very hard for people to enjoy their lives. Um, I can't be spontaneous, and I have little or no flexibility. Uh, Garrett, comments?
Um, I can say a little bit about that. Um, there are some things that I wanted to do, but I couldn't because rules and regulations would just be that wall in the way, and it's real tough. I would have to wait until I can get natural supports to take me to that place.
And not everybody has those natural supports. And understand that it's not that we don't expect that there are rules and regulations and guidelines, but if you were to look at the definition of rehabilitation, for example, it's a very broad definition, and it doesn't have lots of little rules underneath it. It allows for flexibility, and that's what we would like to see in our
My
system, that kind of flexibility.
my fiance, her staff, um, just got fired because she would they counted her doing personal stuff, and I mean the my fiance would allow it, and so I think just those rules and regulations kind of get in the way, but they are rules and regs, so
Right. And we expect people to abide by the Alaska Vision, and that our staff uh, is not carrying out their own stuff, but they're supporting you to have your life, right? So there are on occasion things that happen that shouldn't, but for the most part, the flexibility just allows people to come and go and live their lives as they would like to. Life is not in 15-minute increments. Nobody lives their life in 15-minute increments. It takes longer than that to live an activity, right? Um, we're hearing that people are dying and their funding is not being reinvested uh, in the people that are still waiting. So people are passing away, but those waivers are not being replaced. Um, why are people with natural supports penalized on their rating scores that keep them waiting? So if you are fortunate enough to have natural supports, the state will look at the waitlist criteria and say, well, somebody's taking care of them. They're not dying or in danger right now, so they don't have to come off the wait list. And so that, in a way, penalizes people uh, because they're not dying or critically in danger or whatever. So it's hard. There needs to be a new look we think, at how waitlist draws are selected. Next slide.
I want to add, Kathy, real quick, that when I was just a baby, yeah, I needed I had those natural supports, but I needed all the different kinds of therapy and medications, and and my parents would have gone bankrupt every probably 5 years or so because of the level of care that I needed. Yes, I had those natural supports, but I still needed to have the therapy and the meds and all that to live, to exceed in life.
Right, right. So our infrastructure needs Miralax. It's just too rigid, right? How much longer do I have to wait before I can start my life? And you know, the comments that you hear that, well, my brother graduated high school and he moved away and he started his life, but I can't seem to get help to start mine.
True.
Next slide. So ongoing regulation changes make it very difficult for agencies to provide services in the way that I need them. So again, you know, just little examples of I'd like to do it this way, but somehow the regulations get interpreted that I can only do it this way, which means it's not really what I want, right? They keep changing the rules on me. And this is what I hear a lot. Please don't keep taking things away. Please don't, right?
It,
For service. Um, I'm sorry, the hazards of doing stuff at home. My husband's supposed to answer the phone, but he doesn't hear very well, so it didn't happen.
so
Go ahead.
anyway, but a little bit so like I don't know what if the rules and regs changed for this topic, but like every organization is different on this. But say if we wanted to go to a friend's house, then some would sometimes it would be yes, sometimes it would be no. So I don't know if that's a rules and reg thing or if that's a company like. So anyway, but yeah, that things do change. So and it's not fair, really not. So
So the key coalition's priority ask, if you would, for stabilizing our infrastructure is to stop the infrastructure erosion by providing predictable, sustainable operating funds so that providers can deliver the supports that individuals are requesting. And that we bring SB 174, the DD vision, to life by reinvesting into the services, the cost savings that happened from the healthcare reform or the Medicaid reform bill. So really, I think the easiest way to explain what's happened is that when Medicaid was expanded, in order for the state to save money, they reduced a lot of services and things on the DD side. They set limits and controls and reduced the number of people coming off so that they could funding for that provision service and spend it elsewhere in Medicaid. So what we're saying is that we would like to see the savings that they took reinvested. And we also have made a lot of recommendations. The Governor's Council on Disabilities and Special Education, the AADD Provider Association, and the Key Coalition have made several recommendations to the state that we believe would generate a lot of savings and provide a better way of doing things for individuals. And if they would implement those cost-saving methods, they could afford to provide the services that we're requesting. So that's Key's platform this year. I hope that you'll all be out and active and spreading the word and talking to your legislators and your staffers, remembering that you don't have to be in Juneau to make a difference. All you have to do is show up and be active and talk to your legislator or their staff. You can call your local legislative office and say, we support Key platform, you know. But that's our issues this year. Thank you.